The research vessel, Meridian, drifted silently through the asteroid field, its hull scarred from months of deep space exploration. Commander Sarah Chen clutched her infant son Marcus closer as emergency sirens wailed throughout the ship. The Zephyrian attack had been swift and merciless, targeting the civilian research mission without warning. "All hands to evacuation pods," the ship's AI announced in its eerily calm voice, even as explosions rocked the vessel. Sarah's husband, Dr. James Chen, had been in the laboratory section when the first blast hit. She knew he wasn't coming back. Racing through smoke-filled corridors with other survivors, Sarah reached the evacuation bay just as another massive explosion tore through the ship's central core. The blast sent her tumbling, and she watched in horror as baby Marcus was thrown from her arms. His tiny form sailed through the zero-gravity chaos and landed in an escape pod, just as its doors sealed shut. "No!" Sarah screamed, pounding against the pod's viewport as it automatically launched. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Marcus floating inside, his small fists waving as he cried silently in the vacuum-sealed chamber. The pod's trajectory carried it away from the battle, toward a nearby planet that glowed with an ominous red light. Sarah's own pod launched moments later, but mechanical failure sent it spinning in the opposite direction. As the Meridian exploded behind her, she watched helplessly as her son's escape pod disappeared into the atmosphere of the unknown world below. The planet Drakmor had been marked as uninhabitable in the galactic surveys. Its surface temperature readings suggested volcanic activity, and long-range scans had detected massive life forms that defied classification. What the surveys hadn't revealed was that Drakmor was home to the Valdris, an ancient species of dragon-like beings whose intelligence rivaled any in the galaxy. High above the planet's crimson peaks, Elder Thane soared through the thermal currents on wings that spanned nearly 50 meters. His scales, deep emerald shot through with veins of gold, caught the light of Drakmor's twin suns. At over 800 years old, Thane had seen many strange things fall from the sky, but never anything quite like the small metal object that streaked across the morning sky, trailing fire. The escape pod crashed in the Singing Valleys, a region of Drakmor where the wind created haunting melodies as it passed through the crystal formations. Thane's keen hearing picked up something unusual among the familiar sounds, a high-pitched wailing that spoke of distress and innocence. Curious, the massive dragon descended toward the crash site. The pod had split open on impact, its emergency beacon flashing weakly. Inside, Thane discovered something that would change everything. A tiny humanoid creature, no larger than a Valdris hatchling, lay crying among the debris. Its pink skin was so different from their own scales, and its small limbs moved with desperate energy. Thane had heard whispers of humans from traders who ventured beyond Drakmor's borders. These beings were said to be fragile, short-lived, and unremarkable. Yet as the elder dragon carefully lifted the infant with one massive claw, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. The child's eyes, impossibly blue and bright, looked directly into his own without fear. In that moment, Thane felt a protective instinct so powerful, it took his breath away. "What are you, little star child?" Thane rumbled softly, his deep voice causing the crystal formations to vibrate in harmony. The baby's crying ceased, and tiny fingers reached toward the dragon's snout, grasping at the warm scales. Thane knew he should report this discovery to the Council of Scales, the governing body of the Valdris. First contact protocols existed for a reason, but something about this small being stirred ancient memories of his own lost offspring, taken by raiders centuries ago. The council could wait. Carefully cradling the human infant, Thane flew toward his mountain lair. The Eyrie of Eternal Winds had been his home for 300 years, carved into the peak of Mount Zorath, where few dared to venture. As he settled into his vast chamber filled with crystals, ancient texts, and treasures from a dozen worlds, Thane gently placed the child on a bed of soft thermal moss. The baby began to cry again, and Thane realized with growing alarm that he knew nothing about caring for such a creature. Dragons hatched from eggs already capable of basic communication and able to hunt small prey. This tiny human appeared completely helpless, dependent on others for everything. Drawing on half-remembered observations of mammalian species, Thane attempted to provide sustenance. He gathered nectar from the mountain flowers and warm water from the thermal springs, carefully offering drops to the infant's mouth. To his relief, the child accepted the nourishment eagerly. Days passed, and Thane found himself completely absorbed in caring for his unexpected charge. He named the boy Marcus, as close as his forked tongue could come to the name written on the pod's identification panel. The dragon learned to regulate his body temperature to keep the child warm, to speak in whisper-soft tones that wouldn't frighten him, and to fashion primitive clothing from the softest materials in his hoard. As weeks turned to months, remarkable changes began to manifest. Marcus grew rapidly, faster than Thane had expected from the limited data about human development. More surprisingly, the child seemed to absorb aspects of Valdris biology through some unknown mechanism. His core temperature ran higher than typical for his species, his bones developed with unusual density, and most remarkably, he began to understand Thane's draconic speech far earlier than should have been possible. The first time Marcus spoke was not in human sounds, but in the low, rumbling growl-speak of the dragons. "Papa Thane," he said at 6 months old, his small throat somehow producing the complex harmonics of the Valdris language. The elder dragon wept tears of molten gold that day, but their peaceful existence couldn't last forever. The Valdris were an intensely social species, and Thane's prolonged absence from council meetings had not gone unnoticed. When Councillor Verix arrived unannounced at the Eyrie, Thane had barely enough time to hide Marcus in the deeper chambers before the younger dragon landed on his terrace. "Elder Thane," Verix said, his silver and black scales gleaming as he folded his wings, "the council grows concerned. You miss the seasonal gathering, ignore our sendings, and now rumors spread of strange activities in your domain. The Crater Watchers report an alien vessel's crash in the Singing Valleys months ago. What do you know of this?" Thane kept his expression carefully neutral. "The valleys hold many secrets, young Verix. Perhaps this alien vessel was merely another meteorite. The twin suns create unusual atmospheric effects." "Perhaps," Verix replied, but his golden eyes remained suspicious. "Still, the Council requests your presence. High Commander Draxus speaks of strange energy readings from this region. Some fear another invasion attempt like the Zephyrian incursions." After Verix departed with Thane's promise to attend the next council session, the elder dragon faced a terrible dilemma. He could not reveal Marcus to the council, not yet. Many among the Valdris held prejudices against younger species, viewing them as inferior or potentially threatening. Worse, if word reached the galactic community that dragons had rescued a human child, it could bring unwanted attention to their isolated world. But as Thane watched young Marcus playing with crystal formations, manipulating them with an intuitive understanding that amazed even the ancient dragon, he realized the boy was becoming something unprecedented. Human creativity and adaptability were already legendary, but combined with exposure to Valdris culture and environment, Marcus was developing capabilities that neither species possessed alone. The child could sense thermal currents through the mountain walls, predict weather changes with uncanny accuracy, and most remarkably, seemed to understand the harmonic frequencies that dragons use to shape crystal and stone. When Marcus laughed, the very walls of the Eyrie resonated with musical tones that brought joy to Thane's ancient heart. "My little dragon child," Thane whispered, as he watched Marcus sleep, curled against his massive side like the most natural thing in the galaxy. What wonders will you bring to both our peoples, and what dangers? Unknown to both Thane and Marcus, their story was already beginning to ripple outward. The escape pod's beacon, though damaged, had continued transmitting intermittently. Deep space monitoring stations had detected the signals, and recovery teams were slowly triangulating the source. Moreover, Counselor Varix had not been entirely convinced by Thane's explanations, and his own investigation into the valley's mysteries was uncovering troubling evidence. On a human colony ship 3 systems away, Commander Sarah Chen sat in her quarters staring at a star chart. Against all odds, she had survived her own crash landing and been rescued by a merchant vessel. The loss of her husband and son had nearly broken her, but grief had transformed into determination. Every free moment was spent analyzing trajectory data, studying long-range sensor reports, and following up on the faintest signals that might lead her to her child. The distress beacon data had finally reached her through official channels. Heavily corrupted, but containing enough information to suggest that Marcus's pod had reached the forbidden world of Drakmor. Sarah knew the stories about that planet, the warnings about ancient dragons and deadly atmospheric conditions. No sane person would attempt a landing there. But Sarah Chen was no longer entirely sane. She was a mother whose child was lost among monsters, and she would not rest until she found him. As she began planning what the authorities would certainly consider a suicide mission, she had no idea that her son was not only alive but thriving in ways that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the bonds between species, challenge ancient prejudices, and reveal the true potential that lay hidden when different worlds came together. In his mountain lair, Thane continued to teach and protect the child who had become his son, while forces beyond their control slowly converged on their hidden sanctuary. Time was running out for their secret, but the love between an ancient dragon and a human child had already begun to work changes that neither the Valdris Council nor the human authorities could imagine. Marcus was no longer simply human, nor would he ever be truly dragon. He was becoming something entirely new, a bridge between worlds that might either unite them or tear them apart. The first part of their story was ending, but the greatest challenges lay ahead. Soon, Thane would have to choose between his loyalty to his own people and his love for his adopted son. And Marcus, though still a child, would begin to discover the incredible power that flowed in his hybrid heritage, power that could save or doom everything he held dear. 3 years had passed since the crash, and young Marcus had grown into something extraordinary. Standing nearly as tall as a human child of 6, his development continued to amaze Elder Thane. The boy's skin had taken on a subtle luminescence, and his eyes now held flecks of gold that seemed to swirl when he was excited or angry. Most remarkably, small, almost invisible scales had begun to appear along his spine and shoulders, barely perceptible, but undeniably present. Thane watched from the entrance to his lair as Marcus played in the crystal gardens he had cultivated over the centuries. The boy was singing in the harmonic frequencies of the Valdris while simultaneously humming human melodies, creating impossible musical combinations that made the crystals glow with rainbow light. Such casual mastery of both species' abilities should have been impossible, yet Marcus made it look effortless. "Papa Thane!" Marcus called out in perfect Draconic, his voice carrying undertones that resonated through the mountain stone. "Look what I discovered!" The child held up a fragment of starfall crystal, one of the rarest materials on Drakmor. In his small hands, the crystal pulsed with energy patterns that Thane had never seen before. The elder dragon approached carefully, his massive form casting shadows across the garden. "What have you done?" "Little star singer." "I asked it to show me its memories," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. It remembers falling from the void between stars. It remembers the cold and the dark and the loneliness. So I sang to it about warmth and light and family. And now it's happy. Thane's ancient heart clenched with both wonder and worry. Crystal singing was an ability that took Valdris centuries to master, requiring deep understanding of harmonic frequencies and mineral consciousness. That a 3-year-old hybrid child could not only accomplish this but innovate beyond traditional methods was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. The sound of massive wings approaching interrupted Thane's contemplation. He quickly scooped Marcus into his protective embrace and retreated into the deeper chambers of the lair. Through the crystal windows, he could see not one but 3 dragons approaching, their scales gleaming in the afternoon light. The largest bore the distinctive crimson and gold markings of High Commander Draxus himself. "Elder Thane!" Draxus's voice boomed across the mountain peak as he landed heavily on the terrace. "By order of the Council of Scales, you will present yourself immediately. Your absence from the Harmony Gathering cannot be ignored, and reports of anomalous energy readings from your domain require investigation." Beside Draxus flew Counselor Varix and another dragon Thane didn't recognize, whose blue-silver scales marked him as one of the tech mystics from the inner systems. Thane's heart sank as he realized this was no casual visit. The full power of Valdris authority had come to his door. Hidden in the deep chambers, Marcus pressed against Thane's side, his enhanced hearing picking up every word of the conversation outside. "Papa, who are those dragons? Why do they sound angry?" "They are my people, little one," Thane whispered, his voice heavy with sadness. "And they have come because they fear what they do not understand. Stay here, my star child. No matter what you hear, remain hidden until I return for you." Thane gently placed Marcus in a chamber lined with warm thermal moss, surrounded by glowing crystals that would provide light and comfort. "Remember, you are my son in all ways that matter. Never forget that." Thane emerged onto the terrace, his massive form impressive even among the 3 visitors. "High Commander, you honor my humble lair with your presence." "Dispense with pleasantries, Elder," Draxus growled. "Tech Mystic Zoran has detected energy signatures from this mountain that match no known Valdris technology. The harmonics are all wrong, mixed with frequencies that suggest alien contamination. What are you hiding?" Zoran, the blue-silver dragon, extended sensory tendrils from his skull that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. "The readings are even stronger up close, Commander. Something in these chambers is generating hybrid energy patterns. It's as if someone has been mixing Valdris crystal song with completely foreign harmonics." "I conduct research into ancient crystal formations," Thane replied carefully. "Perhaps your instruments are detecting geological anomalies." "Lies!" Varix hissed, his silver scales rippling with agitation. "I have investigated the crater in the Singing Valleys. Alien metals, chemical residues that match no known Drakmor materials. Something crashed there, and you know what it was." Draxus stepped forward, his enormous presence filling the terrace. "Elder Thane, your service to our people spans 8 centuries. Your wisdom helped us survive the Zephyrian Wars, and your knowledge preserved our cultural treasures through the dark cycles. But loyalty has limits. If you harbor enemies of the Valdris, even you cannot be protected." Before Thane could respond, a new sound reached their sensitive hearing. From deep within the mountain came the pure, crystalline voice of a child singing. But this was no ordinary song. Marcus was unconsciously using his hybrid abilities to comfort himself, and the resulting harmony was unlike anything any pure-blooded Valdris could produce. The very mountain seemed to sing along with him, creating impossible resonances that made every crystal formation on Drakmor pulse in rhythm. The three visiting dragons froze in shock. Zoran's sensory tendrils flared to full extension as he tried to process what he was experiencing. "By the ancient flame," he whispered. "What manner of being could create such music?" "Show us," Draxus commanded, his voice containing the full authority of his rank. "Show us what you hide, Elder Thane, or face the consequences of defying the Council." Thane closed his eyes in defeat. 3 years of secrecy, of careful protection, of building a family beyond the boundaries of species, was about to end. But as he led the 3 dragons deeper into his lair, following the sound of Marcus's innocent song, he made a desperate decision. He would not let them see his son as a threat or an abomination. Marcus was a miracle, and if these dragons could not see that, then perhaps it was the Valdris who were blind. They found Marcus in the crystal chamber, surrounded by glowing formations that pulsed in perfect harmony with his song. The boy looked up as the massive forms entered, his gold-flecked eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. When he saw Thane, his face lit up with joy. "Papa! I've been teaching the mountain crystals about human lullabies! Listen!" Marcus raised his small voice again, and the entire chamber resonated with impossible beauty. The crystals painted rainbow patterns on the walls, and even the ancient stones seemed to hum with contentment. The 3 visiting dragons stood in stunned silence. Draxus, who had seen combat across a dozen star systems, found himself speechless. Varrix's aggressive posture melted into confused wonder. But it was Zoran who reacted first, his scientific mind racing to comprehend the implications of what he witnessed. "Impossible," the tech mystic breathed. "Pure harmonic resonance across multiple frequency bands, biological integration with mineral consciousness, and the energy signature. It's as if someone took Valdris crystal song and mixed it with completely alien harmonics to create something entirely new." Marcus tilted his head at the strange dragons, then looked up at Thane. "Papa, why does the silver-blue one taste like surprise and confusion? Are they sick?" "He can sense our emotional states," Zoran whispered, his instruments going wild as he tried to scan the child. "But that's not possible. Empathic abilities require specialized neural structures that take centuries to develop." Draxus finally found his voice. "What is this creature, Thane? And do not insult my intelligence with more lies." Thane moved protectively in front of Marcus, his massive form shielding the boy from the other dragon's intense stares. "His name is Marcus. He is my son." "Your son?" Varrix laughed harshly. "Elder, have the centuries finally addled your mind? This is clearly some form of alien life. Look at it, the wrong number of limbs, no scales, no wings, no proper draconic features at all." "He is human," Thane said quietly, and the words fell like stones into still water. "His people's ship was destroyed by Zephyrian raiders. I found him in the wreckage, alone and dying. I could not let an innocent child perish." The silence that followed was deafening. Draxus's eyes blazed with golden fire as the implications sank in. A human child, here, on Drakmor, for 3 years. Each word was measured, controlled, but underneath lay a volcano of rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved a life," Thane replied firmly, "as any civilized being would do." "You've compromised our entire world," Draxus roared, his voice causing crystal formations to crack. "Humans are conquerors, colonizers who spread across the galaxy like a plague. They destroy everything they touch, and you've given one access to our deepest secrets." Marcus flinched at the angry sounds and pressed closer to Thane. The boy's emotional distress triggered an unconscious response, and every crystal in the chamber began to pulse with warning colors. The harmonic frequencies he was unconsciously generating made the mountain itself seem to growl in protection. "Stop," Thane commanded, his own ancient power rising to match Draxus's anger. You will not frighten my son with your ignorance. Your son, Varric spat. This abomination is not Valdris. It has no place here. Look at him, Zoran suddenly interjected, his scientific fascination overriding his shock. Really look, the scale formations along his spine, the harmonic abilities, the crystal resonance. This isn't just a human child anymore. Somehow, exposure to our environment and culture has triggered adaptations that should be biologically impossible. The tech mystic's tendrils extended toward Marcus, who watched them with curious interest rather than fear. Fascinating. His DNA shows clear human origins, but with modifications that suggest environmental adaptation at the cellular level. It's as if his genetic structure is naturally incorporating traits from his surroundings. Papa, the pretty blue one wants to study me, Marcus said in perfect Draconic, then switched to English with equal fluency. Is that okay? I like learning new things. The casual display of linguistic mastery in both languages stunned the visitors into silence once again. Draxus stared at the child with a mixture of awe and horror. It speaks our tongue perfectly. How long has it been learning our language? Since he first began to speak, Thane replied. Marcus learned both languages simultaneously. His mind appears to process information differently than either humans or Valdris. Zoran's excitement was growing by the moment. The neural plasticity required for such linguistic integration, combined with the harmonic abilities and empathic sensitivity. Commander, this child represents something unprecedented in galactic biology. He's not just human anymore, and he's not Valdris either. He's something entirely new. Something dangerous, Draxus growled, but his tone had shifted from rage to calculation. If the galactic community learns that humans can adapt to our environment, can learn our secrets, can become something more than their base nature, every human colony ship in the galaxy will head for Drakmor. Then we destroy it before that happens, Varric said coldly. One small life weighed against the safety of our entire species. Marcus gasped at the words, his young mind understanding the threat, even if he couldn't comprehend the politics behind it. Tears began to flow down his small face, and his emotional distress triggered something none of them expected. Every crystal formation in the chamber, throughout the mountain, across the entire peak, began to resonate with his pain. The harmonic frequencies he unconsciously generated created a song of such heartbreaking beauty that even Draxus felt tears forming in his ancient eyes. But more than that, Marcus's hybrid nature allowed him to tap into the mountain's deep mineral consciousness in ways that no pure-blooded Valdris could match. The entire peak began to respond to his distress, and suddenly the three visiting dragons found themselves facing something far more significant than one adopted child. The mountain itself was protecting Marcus, responding to his emotional state with geological sympathy that bordered on sentience. Thermal vents opened in warning, crystal formations grew to block potential escape routes, and the harmonic frequencies building in the stone suggested that Drakmor itself might be choosing sides in this confrontation. By the ancient flame, Zoran whispered in awe. He's not just adapted to our environment. He's bonded with it at a fundamental level. The planet is responding to him as if he were a part of its own consciousness. Thane felt a surge of fierce pride mixed with terror. His son was revealing abilities that surpassed anything in Valdris history, but in doing so, he was also making himself a threat that the authorities might feel compelled to eliminate. The next few moments would determine not just Marcus's fate, but possibly the future relationship between humans and Valdris across the galaxy. As the mountain continued its harmonic defense of the child who had learned to sing its songs, Draxus faced a decision that would echo through history. In this chamber carved from living stone, with crystals painting rainbows of light and a hybrid child whose tears could move mountains, the High Commander of the Valdris had to choose between fear and wonder, between isolation and the possibility of something greater than either species had achieved alone. The confrontation was far from over, and forces beyond this mountain were still moving toward an inevitable collision. But in this moment, as Marcus's innocent song transformed pain into beauty and made the very planet itself stand guard, something fundamental had shifted in the balance between worlds. The mountain's harmonic defense gradually subsided as Marcus's emotions stabilized, but the implications of what they had witnessed hung heavy in the crystal-lit chamber. High Commander Draxus stood perfectly still, his ancient mind processing scenarios and consequences while the hybrid child clung to Thane's protective embrace. "This changes everything," Zoran whispered, his instrument still recording impossible readings. "Commander, we're not just dealing with a human child anymore. This level of planetary integration suggests that Marcus has formed a symbiotic relationship with Drakmor itself. Removing him could cause geological instability across the entire system." Varix paced nervously, his silver scales rippling with agitation. "You're suggesting we allow this contamination to continue? The Council will never approve harboring a human, regardless of his abilities." "Then perhaps," a new voice interrupted from the chamber entrance, "the Council needs to expand its understanding of what constitutes strength." All heads turned as Elder Cynthia entered the chamber, her iridescent white scales marked with the blue spirals that designated her as the most senior member of the Council of Scales. Behind her came two other elder dragons, their combined age and authority creating an almost overwhelming presence in the confined space. "Elder Cynthia," Draxus said carefully, "I was not aware the Council had dispatched additional investigators." "The Council didn't," she replied, her ancient voice carrying harmonics that spoke of wisdom earned across millennia. "I came because I felt the mountain singing. Such resonance patterns have not been heard on Drakmor for over 3,000 years, not since the time of the Great Harmony, when our ancestors first learned to speak with the planet itself." Cynthia's gaze fell upon Marcus, who was watching the newcomers with wide-eyed curiosity. When their eyes met, something extraordinary happened. The child's gold-flecked gaze seemed to peer directly into the elder's soul, and for a brief moment, Cynthia experienced what could only be described as perfect understanding. In that instant, she saw not an alien threat, but a bridge between worlds that might heal wounds she had carried for centuries. "Hello, young songweaver," she said gently, lowering her massive head to Marcus's level. "I am Cynthia. Your music has traveled far across our world, and many have wondered about its source." Marcus smiled brilliantly and responded in flawless ancient Draconic, a dialect that had been dead for over a millennium. "Hello, wise one. Your scales sing of deep waters and starlight. Are you the one the mountain spirits whisper about? She who remembers the first songs?" Stunned silence filled the chamber. Ancient Draconic was a language so complex that even most contemporary dragons struggled with its basic forms. For a 3-year-old hybrid to speak it fluently was beyond impossible. "How do you know the old tongue?" Cynthia asked, her voice filled with wonder. "The crystals remember," Marcus replied simply. "When I sing with them, they share their memories. They remember when the first dragons came to this world and made the great pacts with the mountain spirits. They remember the songs of binding and the promises of protection. Zoran's instruments were nearly overloading with the readings they were generating." "Elder Cynthia, this child isn't just accessing planetary consciousness. He's tapping into crystalline memory banks that we thought were purely geological. If the crystals have been recording our history for millennia, then our past, present, and future may all be open books to him," Cynthia finished thoughtfully. She studied Marcus with new understanding. "Child, what else do the crystals tell you?" Marcus considered the question seriously. His young face scrunched in concentration. They tell me about the scared dragons who came here long ago, running from the dark ships that ate stars. They remember the promises made to keep this world safe. But they also remember loneliness, because the promises meant no new friends, no new songs, no new stories. The isolation accords, Elder Cynthia whispered. He's accessing memories from when we established the planetary quarantine 3,000 years ago. Draxus stepped forward, his expression troubled. With respect, Elder Cynthia, regardless of the child's abilities, his presence here represents a massive security breach. If other humans learn that one of their kind not only survived on Drakmor, but thrived, then perhaps it's time we reconsidered whether isolation truly serves our people's best interests, Cynthia replied calmly. Tell me, Commander, what do you see when you look at this child? I see a threat to everything we've built, Draxus answered honestly. Humans are aggressive, expansionist, destructive. This one may seem harmless now, but what happens when he grows up? What happens when he returns to his people and tells them about our weaknesses? Marcus looked up at Draxus with those impossibly wise eyes. Sir Dragon, why are you afraid of me? I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to learn and sing and make the crystals happy. The innocence in his voice was devastating, but it was what happened next that truly changed everything. As Marcus spoke, his hybrid nature unconsciously projected his emotional state through harmonic frequencies that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to the deepest levels of Valdris consciousness. For just a moment, every dragon in the chamber experienced what Marcus truly was. Not a threat, not an alien invader, but a child who loved them unconditionally, who saw them as family, who would gladly give his life to protect the world that had become his home. Draxus staggered under the emotional impact, his ancient barriers crumbling before such pure, innocent devotion. By the ancient flame, he gasped, what did you do? He showed you truth, Thane said quietly. This is who my son really is, beneath your fears and prejudices. This is the being you would destroy to preserve our isolation. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the mountain. Zoran's instruments detected massive energy signatures approaching from orbit, and the mountain's crystal network confirmed what they all feared. Ships were descending toward Drakmor, human ships that had somehow tracked the ancient distress beacon to its source. They've found us, Varix hissed. The humans have come for their spawn. Through the crystal viewing screens that lined the chamber, they watched as 3 human vessels broke through the atmospheric barrier. The lead ship was clearly military, its sleek hull bristling with weapons systems. But it wasn't firing. Instead, it was broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies, requesting permission to land and retrieve survivors from the research vessel Meridian. They don't know what they'll find here, Elder Cynthia observed. To them, this is a rescue mission. Marcus pressed against the viewing crystal, his small hands leaving prints on the smooth surface. Something in his expression had changed, a look of intense concentration that reminded them all of his hybrid nature. Papa, he said quietly, there's something familiar about the lead ship, the harmonic signature of its engines. It feels like family. Thane's hearts clenched as he realized what Marcus was sensing. Your birth family, little star singer. They've come looking for you. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If humans had tracked their lost child to Drakmor, if they saw him thriving among the dragons, if they learned about his incredible adaptations and abilities, the carefully maintained isolation that had protected the Valdris for millennia would be shattered forever. We have to return him, Draxus said grimly. It's the only way to preserve the secret. No, Marcus said firmly, his young voice carrying surprising authority. I won't leave Papa Thane. This is my home now. Child, you don't understand, Varix interjected. if your people see what you've become, if they learn our secrets, then maybe it's time our peoples stopped being strangers, Elder Cynthia interrupted. She turned to address the group with the full weight of her ancient authority. I have lived for over 2,000 years. I have watched our civilization stagnate in isolation, watched our young ones grow restless with no new challenges, no new discoveries, no new songs to sing. Perhaps this child represents not a threat, but an opportunity. Zoran's excitement was building as he processed the possibilities. The biological adaptations alone could revolutionize our understanding of genetic compatibility across species. And if humans and Valdris could find common ground through children like Marcus, you're talking about fundamental changes to our entire society, Draxus warned. The risks are enormous. So are the rewards, Cynthia replied. And look at what we've already gained. She gestured toward Marcus, who was unconsciously humming while studying the approaching ships. Around him, the chamber's crystals pulsed with gentle light, responding to his presence with a harmony that none of them had thought possible. The communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission from the human ships. A woman's voice, strained with desperate hope, filled the chamber. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We're tracking a distress beacon from the research vessel Meridian. Our scans indicate the beacon is located on your world. We request permission to search for survivors, particularly a small child who may have reached your surface. Please respond. Marcus gasped, his eyes filling with tears. The harmonic frequencies he was unconsciously generating created such a pure expression of recognition and longing that even the mountain itself seemed to respond. "Mama," he whispered in perfect English. "That's my birth mama." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of activated crystals. Here was the moment of truth, the decision that would reshape the future of both species. A human mother seeking her lost child, a dragon father who had raised that child as his own, and a hybrid being who represented possibilities that neither species had imagined. "We have a choice," Elder Cynthia said softly. "We can hide, maintain our isolation, and lose the greatest opportunity for growth our people have seen in millennia. Or we can trust in the bonds that have already been forged and see where they might lead us all." Thane looked down at Marcus, seeing in the child's face both the innocent baby he had rescued and the remarkable being that love and acceptance had allowed him to become. "The choice should be his," the elder dragon said quietly. "Marcus, little star singer, what does your heart tell you?" Marcus looked up at Thane with those gold-flecked eyes, then around the chamber at the dragons who had become his extended family. Finally, his gaze settled on the communication system carrying his birth mother's voice. "I want to see my birth mama," he said carefully in Draconic, then repeated in English. "But I want Papa Thane with me, and I want her to know that I'm not just human anymore. I'm something new, something that belongs to both worlds." He paused, considering his words with the wisdom that his hybrid nature had granted him. Maybe it's time for dragons and humans to learn each other's songs. Maybe that's why the crystals kept my pod safe, why Papa found me, why I can sing to mountains and speak to stars. Maybe I'm supposed to be a bridge. Elder Cynthia smiled, an expression that transformed her ancient features with surprising warmth. "From the mouths of babes," she murmured. "Very well, young bridge builder. Let us see if your birth mother is ready to learn some new songs." As the human ships descended toward the landing coordinates the Valdris provided, as Sarah Chen prepared for a reunion she had never dared hope for, and as two civilizations stood on the brink of first contact, through the love of a mother for her child and a dragon for his adopted son, Marcus began to sing. His voice rose in harmonies that blended human melodies with draconic crystal song, creating music that spoke of love transcending species, of families formed by choice rather than blood, and of possibilities that could reshape the galaxy. The mountain itself joined in his song, and across Drakmore, other Valdris stopped their daily activities to listen to something they had never heard before. The sound of two worlds learning to sing together. The landing was still hours away. The conversations that would determine the future were yet to come, and countless challenges lay ahead. But in that moment, as a hybrid child song bridged the gap between human hope and dragon wisdom, the first notes of a galactic symphony began to play. Marcus was no longer just the human baby who had survived a dragon's nest. He had become something unprecedented, living proof that love could overcome fear, that difference could become strength, and that sometimes the most important bridges were built not by governments or armies, but by children who refused to accept that anyone had to be strangers forever. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of cooperation was about to begin. All because a dragon father had chosen love over fear, and a human child had learned to sing in harmony with the stars.